Salutations everyone, this is Razor bringing you guys another Overwatch 2 video where today I want to talk about hero balances, sort of as an idea. The meta heroes getting nerfed, the lower heroes getting buffed, what goes into that decision, both from the community as a whole to hold the opinion that this character needs to be changed for the good or for the better, as well as the dev team taking a look at their data and player feedback and be like, okay, we should probably change this. What goes into that decision and what is best for the game? Because obviously there's been a ton of changes in Overwatch. We've had huge game sweeping changes, whether it go from, no limits to roll queue to 5v5 to the latest patch that changed everybody's health and projectile size and speed and things of that nature. We've had huge changes. And every couple of seasons now, we're getting a new character, and every new character has always injected new life into the game. People are like, hey, this is the character I've been waiting for. I'm going to play them. Or, hey, this filling a hole in this role that, needed to be filled. So that's going to be great. I can play them with this combo or on this map and things like that. Or they're just, hey, they're really fun and I want to play them all the time. Anytime there's a new character, there's going to be changes because of how strong or weak they may be. We've had both sides of this coin. When Lifeweaver was first introduced to the game, super duper weak, got a bunch of buffs and then more buffs and then nerfs, and kind of is where he is now, still at the bottom. But hey, way better than he was before. And then we had Iyari, who was just way too strong right out the gate, and then she got nerfs and then buff, and then nerf and more buff. And now she's pretty good right now. She's, I feel like, in a good spot, like balance-wise, win percentage-wise, and how she is perceived in the game. Definitely has her role. So, like, we've seen, a launch be really, really good one way or really, really bad another way. And how they combo with other characters and how they perform on certain maps and have interactions with the rest of the cast always goes into the equation of whether this character needs to be buffed or nerfed, or maybe we need to tweak this ability or change it altogether. We've had plenty of reworks, and we have more coming in with Wrecking Ball, and probably more so in the future. Symmetra's got so many changes. Every few patches, Mercy gets some changes to her movement, and they never can seem to quite get it right, for the community. It's like whenever Facebook got changed, back when people used to use Facebook, it was always, 10 million strong against the new Facebook. And it's kind of like that with Mercy. People are like, the last one was the good one, and they changed it. Like, no, the last one was the good one. So, things will always consistently change and always, never fully get the entire community's approval, right? And I feel like the community as a whole, sort of has this entitlement to parity, to where people feel like the game always needs to change just so that it changes. Not because the character's too weak or too strong. People seem to have some sort of knee-jerk need for Overwatch to, the metagame, to just always change. And I understand the philosophy behind that. People don't want the game to stagnate and never change. People don't want the meta to be the same forever because, the character that they like to play isn't really good against what is good right now. So they want there to be some sort of change, or it's just like, hey, I'm kind of tired of seeing the same things over and over. Not that we've ever really had that, because whether you're playing quick play or competitive with new characters and maps and things coming out and patches, we're always getting changed naturally. We're naturally always getting changed without changing things for change's sake. But I think we've also had that in Overwatch's lifetime. Just take a look at Overwatch 2, right? In the beta, Soldier 76 was stupid strong, stupid OP. And when the game came out, they nerfed some things to his kit. And he was still really good. He was still one of the top performers, out the gate. And then, patches go by, and then one patch, Soldier 76 gets 6 buffs. 6 buffs out of nowhere. He just gets 6 buffs when he was already one of the higher performing DPS characters. And he gets 6 buffs, and he just completely dominates the game. And it's like, all right, what was the reasoning behind that? And, they always have something in the developer notes justifying some of their changes. But that kind of felt like, hey, this character is really good. Let's make him even better for some reason. That kind of seemed like a change for change's sake. And it's not just always characters that are doing well. You can have characters that aren't doing well. Ana has drawn a lot of ire. I mean, an entire video that I was really proud of that nobody watched about Ana and the anti-nade, because people kept complaining anti-nade is OP, anti-nade's OP, gotta nerf Ana, gotta nerf Ana. While at the same time, Ana was bottom 2 in win percentage at every single level. She was bottom 2, with Lifeweaver usually being at the bottom, right? And yet people still wanted her to be nerfed, even though she was one of the worst supports in the game, performance-wise. She was still picked, obviously. She still didn't have, the lowest or even one of the lowest pick rates at the time. So it's not like her character was complete trash, because people still wanted and did play her. But people were like, hey, even though she's not doing well, we should nerf her. And the community were heard. Every single time the community's heard, whether you like it or not, no matter how you want to paint the devs, because yes, they're not perfect, but they listen to the community. Whenever the community is outraged about something, or they have a consensus idea about something, the devs are going to listen, and they're going to change. They're going to change. Maybe it's not the exact change you want. Maybe the buff wasn't as strong as you want, the nerf wasn't as strong as you want, or it didn't happen as fast as you want, but it always happens. Whenever a character like Mauga is like, this character's too strong, and guess what? Their data completely supported that, and so they nerfed him, and then they buffed him, and they buffed him. So, maybe Mauga needs an unnerf. I don't know. We're not here to talk about individual characters, but just kind of as a whole. We hate it when something completely dominates, like Mauga when he first came out. He was just the best from the jump. He was the best on every single map, with any DPS, with any support. He was just the best, and that was bad for the game. And it was like that, at the top level of play with Junker Queen for a bit, right? You just saw Junker Queen played on every single map, which is not something we had seen prior to that, patch of the game, where one tank was just the best. Sure, at the very, very top level of professional play, but she was used on every single map in every single situation because she was the best. And so, we don't like seeing that, obviously, as viewers, but as players, it kind of holds a bit more weight in what people feel, because, they're the paying customer. And, the dev team are also part of the community, because they're also human. They're also in gold and bronze and silver and plat and diamond. They are also humans that have their own experience within the game of Overwatch. But people, I feel like, are just always wanting change. And again, I understand the idea behind that, because they don't want things to always be the same, but we have never really had that. We've had certain characters be good for long periods of time, whether it be a tank or a support or a DPS, but those times always come and go. And we tend to see characters with really high skill ceilings only be quote unquote an issue at the top level of play, whether it be Tracer or Widowmaker back in the day. I don't know how many years it's been since she's been actually meta for professional players, but she's really hard because you got to hit headshots to get value out of her, and everyone's got a ton of movement, and maybe it's a small map, so she's not going to be great at every single map. So you're not going to see Widowmakers pop off in bronze, silver, gold, plat, diamonds. You're not going to really see that, but you would see it in the top level play because she was really hard to get that value out of. And Tracer has been, for example, meta for, I would say, probably just over half of Overwatch's lifespan. Obviously, when it first came out and there was no limits, it was just Tracer Winston versus Tracer Winston. But we've seen areas where she has been meta, and we're seeing, people like Kevster and Sabiolbe pop off during their eras. And we've had times for instance, like Goats, where we didn't see any DPS, but especially DPS that weren't good against tanks like, Tracer or Genji for that era. And we've seen time where other DPS are just way better, to where there was no reason to play Tracer. Not that she was nerfed during that certain patch, but Soldier was just really strong, or Reaper or Mei or Sombra as a combo was just really, really, really strong, and there was no reason to play Tracer because you just weren't going to get the same kind of value out of her. So we've seen things fluctuate with this character, but Tracer is also super unique in that she's the least changed character in all of Overwatch. And she's been here since the beginning. There's never been a build of Overwatch that has existed to where Tracer wasn't a playable character. Yet she's been changed the least. So you would kind of have the idea that, hey, she's been pretty well tuned. In Overwatch 1's entire lifespan, she had an exact total of 4 changes. 4 changes. A nerf to her Pulse Bomb, which kind of came out of nowhere. We went 2 years with no changes at all to Tracer. And then out of the blue, they're like, we're going to nerf Pulse Bomb for some reason. And now we couldn't even kill a Bastion if you stuck a Pulse Bomb on him. So it was like, well, that was a dumb change. And then, a few months go by and they, backtrack halfway on that nerf. They undo that nerf by 50%. And then, they change her effective range when that falls off. Is it 15? Is it 12? Is it 10? And then it's 12 again, then it's 10, then it's 12, then it's 10. She hasn't had a lot of changes, but anytime she tends to get changed, it gets reverted at very least partially, if not all the way. And so it kind of feels like the devs are wasting their own time there. It's like, you guys nerf her and then you unnerf her. It kind of feels like she was kind of good to begin with. So maybe she didn't need changes as often as you gave her, because her kit is pretty straightforward. There's only one thing she can do to do damage. Almost any character, even many support characters, can do damage in multiple ways. All Tracer can do is shoot at close range with these dual pistols. And she's got Pulse Bomb, one of the hardest ultimates to use. And, usually best case scenario, you get one singular kill with it. Where if you get one single kill with Dragon Blade, that's kind of that's crap. If you get a single kill with Visor, then hey, that wasn't a good Visor. But you get a single kill with Pulse Bomb, you're like, damn, that was a poggers Pulse Bomb because you got one kill with it. So her kit has balance, innate within it. She's not going to be good at long range at all. She's going to be the worst. And maybe at medium range, there's going to be plenty of characters that are just going to be way better in certain metas and certain eras and things like that. But still, people will always tend to look at the top and be like, hey, this thing's at the top, let's make it not at the top anymore. Just so there's parity, just so there's change. And this, isn't always DPS. Sometimes it's tank and sometimes it's support. Where people be like, this character has been meta for a while, let's nerf him just to nerf them. And there's also the people like, hey, let's stop nerfing and just buff everything else so it's at their level. And that's a cute idea. It's a wonderful idea. It's also impossible because you can't have characters in Overwatch be just as good as one another because they have different abilities. It's not like a shoot-a-man game where it's a assault rifle that's like, hey, okay, it has damage and recoil and magazine size to where you can kind of get the guns to be different but also be just as good as one another. You can't have that in Overwatch because Tracer and Soldier have completely different skill sets and different abilities to where you can't have them be as good as one another. You can't have Tracer as good at long range as Soldier or Widow or Ashe. You can't have Soldier as good at close range as Reaper or Tracer. You just can't have that. So we're not going to be at a state where every character is just as good as one another, but as an idea, I think it's feasible to where we can get a character or a group of characters to where like, hey, they're good. They don't need to be changed. And sometimes we'll be able to look at a tank or a DPS or a support and be like, hey, they're at the top. Let's just make them not at the top anymore for X reason. You don't like them. They're good against what you would like to play, or they've just been good for a long time. Tracer, for instance, she's number 1 in GM right now. She's not number 1 in Masters or anywhere below, but she's top 6, I believe, at every single rank. So you don't have to worry about, buffing her, I would say. But does she need to be nerfed? Because she got nerfed, and today it was announced she's getting another nerf. Sombra has, not one of the highest win percentages, but how she interacts with her buffed virus, getting that nerfed does make sense. From, the community standpoint, they hate getting flanked and spawn killed by Sombra. Tracer, Soldier, Reinhardt, those characters can't do that sort of thing and can't really be as oppressive in those situations. But people still will look at the top and be like, hey, Orissa's good, let's have her not be good. That happens anytime Orissa's good. Very quickly, she's not good because the community doesn't like her being good or doesn't like her being good for long. Tracer, she'll always have a target on her back whenever she is toward the top, and then she'll get nerfed and then reverted because guess what? We didn't need that nerf. She was in a good place, so we don't need to change characters. We don't need to take a character that was good like Soldier and then give him buffs. He was already good. We don't need to take a character like Ana, who's really bad, and then nerf her. And we also don't need to take a character like Tracer, who's good at the highest levels right now, and I feel like maybe we don't need to nerf her or have multiple nerfs or consecutive nerfs or multiple nerfs at once kind of thing. I think we should sort of hold back. People are asking for hero bans, and guess what? We already had hero bans, believe it or not. Read a history book of Overwatch. We had hero bans. Did that help the meta? Did that help parity? sometimes it forced people to play other characters because that other character wasn't available, but that didn't really make the game better. And it didn't last long because it was pretty obvious it didn't work. It didn't make the game better. Balancing is the best way to go, but if a character is just good for a long time or really good at the highest levels only, maybe we don't need to buff them. Maybe we don't need to nerf them. Maybe we don't need to change just for change's sake. There are plenty of things that we should change about certain characters, get them better or make them less niche, but it's also okay for a character to just be good in that niche. It's okay for Reaper not to be good at long range, right? It's okay for Mei to be good against this character, but not to be good against another character. That's okay, because parity and fresh changes to the game and your experience, it's never going to stagnate. It's never going to be the same for time and time again. Maybe a certain season or a certain meta, you don't like how something's working for your character or another character, but that character is going to get nerfed and your character is going to get buffed, because that's just what's naturally going to happen. We don't need to infuse change for change's sake, which I feel like we're getting and a lot of people are clamoring for.